Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Help is here. Help is on the way. If you're feeling just, you can't do it anymore. Hit the wall. You're burned out. You're fried. She's a professional burnout specialist. And I just learned a couple of seconds before we jumped in here that she does so much more. So we're going to dig into that today. Anna Lovell Nesmith joins us. How you doing, Anna?
I'm good. How are you, Steve?
Doing well, doing well. So in the past couple of times that we got together, we did talk about how you help people that are just feeling that I guess it's a sense of helplessness. Like, what do I do? I just can't, my plate is full. It's overflowing. I'm stacked. Why don't we just reiterate that, kind of reset that, and then talk about some of the emotional release you do, some of the energy work you do as well.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. So as a professional burnout specialist, what makes you different than, let's say, a therapist or like a life coach?
So I really just work specifically with burnout, and we talk about what those symptoms look like, how it's affecting your life, and how we can navigate and learn to overcome burnout. But my goal is that I work with people for maybe 3 to 6 months, and then they are liberated from the situation. They leave with tools that they can use for the rest of their life. It doesn't take many years. I'm not dealing with, childhood trauma. I mean, sometimes that will pop up, but I know counselors will often go back to childhood or just things that are happening that have been around for a long time. Whereas I'm really more focused on the present or, the relatively recent past, maybe last year. But we don't dive deep into, childhood stuff and work with some really deep wounds that a lot of counselors do.
Okay. Not in not doing that, how are you helping people with burnout? Is it just a really giving them clarity, giving them a plan so that they can kind of move forward, navigate?
Yeah, absolutely. And also empowering them and also talking with them. How did the things that you're doing, how are they serving you in real time? Do you notice a difference immediately? How do you feel when you're taking these tools and exercising them? Are you noticing that you feel like you're in more control, that you have a better, grounded way to approach and move forward? And so it's really just the awareness of what they're doing in the day in and the day out. Because a lot of times, like we've talked about, burnout is this reactive state. I mean, many other things as well, but you're constantly reacting. It's not just trying to respond, which is what we work with. So.
Excellent. So I'm quite refreshed to learn that you, with what you do as a burnout specialist, you also do energy work to help people. How cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Didn't know. Let's go there. So you do Reiki and yes, you can do that virtually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can because I'm second degree. So first degree is just hands-on. I mean, loosely hands-on. You have to be really delicate. But when you're second degree, then you are able to do things from afar.
So for many that haven't grasped the concept of energy healing, and energy is everything. We're all energy. It's all us. How would you help somebody that's got burnout?
So it just depends on if they would prefer Reiki or if they prefer like an emotional block release. It just is really relative to the person. And if they're not really familiar with Reiki, of course they can still try it. But some people are more, it seems more obsolete. Like, what is that? I don't know how to even. And some people just don't really feel the energy work is that valid. And that's okay too. So it's just relative to the person and where they're at on their journey and how they feel it may or may not serve them.
I want to share with you, and this is for everybody else to kind of illustrate how this stuff is real. But I had a first ever Reiki session virtually. I guess it was probably 5 months ago, somewhere around there. And I kind of ignored it like everybody else. Yeah, foo foo woo woo, whatever. I think it probably works, but I'm not there yet. And we just text me and the Reiki master and said, all right, 8 o'clock tonight, be in a comfortable spot. I'm going to do my thing. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I'm sitting down on the couch and I tried not to think that I'm experiencing something because I'm thinking that I'm experiencing something, but I did feel a sensation from my head to my toes and back up again. I was like, whatever. So 45 minutes later, I get a text and it was a real long text. And what she said was, while I was performing the Reiki session on you, I got this visual and I got to share it with you. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And she said, you were taking me through on a little boat, like through reeds and weeds and just in the water, and we're looking at sea life and everything together. She goes, I don't know what that means. I don't know why I'm not, but I got to tell you, this came out of it, and I want to share it. And she was describing my Zen. I go kayaking, and
Yeah.
that's where I go. And there's no way she would have known that. You're not going to find it on Facebook. Nothing like that. So that was my initial validation. Oh, something, you got something going on here. And then past that, a week later, even days later, I started feeling better, lighter, more clarity, and that was my aha moment that this stuff is real.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, and I'm so grateful that you shared that story because it's almost hard to describe what Reiki does, right? Because for each person, it manifests differently because it's energy. So
Yep.
it gives the energy that that specific person needs. And there was all of it, also validation there for you that what she shared with you, she couldn't have known, and you didn't tell her, prior to, but there you were. And it's interesting the weeds were brought up because that was probably releasing some of the emotional blocks that were blocking you throughout her when she was giving you the practice, the Reiki.
But that's where I go when I want to relax. I go kayaking, and those are the places I go. Usually, I don't go to. I get like freshwater, so I love looking at the sea life and everything going on there. I never talked to this person again. It was all by text.
Yeah.
We verbally set it up, but past that, and I didn't do anything. I just like a slob. I just laid on the couch and did.
Yeah. How did you feel though? Did you feel different within a few days?
I did. Yeah, it was just a sense of calm. Sense
Yeah.
of calm, a little bit lighter,
Yeah.
less muck pressure on my shoulders, just in general. And then I had another session. I had one after that. It was another virtual. I will admit it wasn't as good. However, I was in my car. I was waiting to pick up my son. I had driven to a spot where I could be a little quiet. It was kind of a sketchy area. So my
Okay.
mind, my mind was on that, and
Yeah.
it was on me. I wasn't in the best uh, environment. But then I had one in person, a friend of a friend. Silly stuff happens. I had, it was a birthday party for me, and I have a bunch of friends, everybody around, and it was a friend of a friend who does Reiki. She took me outside into the parking lot and started doing Reiki on me.
Oh.
And I started feeling something, and people are walking out. What are you doing out there? And then again, not the best environment, so we continued it somewhere else later, but same situation. In fact, I fell asleep during it.
Oftentimes that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I woke up, and even the same feeling, like just like calmer. Yeah, things are good now. Things are good. Just and she did also chakra cleansing as well.
Oh, that's nice. That's
Yeah. Is that something you do? Do you clear out energy?
well, Reiki does that in itself. I mean, I'll do chakra alignment, but that's not chakra alignment that I do. I'll do it. It's more in person. I mean, I've done it with people over Zoom and stuff, but it's not where I really rest. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, this was what she was doing was kind of hardcore. She had a fire going in the backyard, and she was like drawing the energy out. And
yeah.
I'm just sitting here doing nothing, and whatever you got to do to make it work and make you feel better. Emotional release, that's something that you do in terms of energy work, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So it's emotional block release. So we all have, and so as much as I said in the beginning, I don't go to the childhood trauma and I don't really dive into that with people. Oftentimes, emotional blocks can stem from circumstances or events when people were younger. And not that, so the super traumatic things can surface. One of my clients, she had been abused when she was a little girl. And so that came up in one of the emotional block release sessions. But she had done enough of her own healing in between with a therapist. And when she saw me, that when we talked about it, it was at a different level. It was still kind of there, but it was not like it was when before she'd sought therapy and worked out, figured out how to navigate and heal from that. But so the block was still there though, it just wasn't as deep and it wasn't as triggering for her. And so that block, we just identified where it was coming from, what it looked like to her. Because the thing about the emotional blocks is we have to get into the nitty gritty and figure out what is that block? Because for every person, it's different. Oftentimes it will look similar, like lacking self-worth or feeling like they're not good enough or feeling like they never do things correctly. But why is really specific to the person. And so when I'm talking with people, it takes about between 20 and 35 minutes or so. And we really get into this, like, okay, what is it that you're feeling in your day in and day out? What do you think is always that like whisper that's on repeat in your head that's telling you you're not good enough and that you're a failure and that you're never going to be anything more than what you are, or that you don't do well enough? I mean, there's these things that whisper to us, and we have to figure out what is the script, what are the words. And once we find out what it means, and it's so interesting because I'll throw out words. Is it you're not good enough? Is it that you're never doing your best? Is it that you could always try harder? And then it's like people say no, 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 and I just throw words out. But as soon as the word, it's like it resonates, you see a light, like, oh, that really hit home. And then we know that that is the block that we need to remove. And then we just remove that block.
I've never heard that described like that before. And it makes such crystal clear sense, because if you're going to do any energy healing work, you got to know what you're working on.
Yes.
And it's almost like you're a detective, you know, you're
Right.
going there to, to find out. And then now, now you're in the zone. Now you know
Yeah.
what you need to work on. Wow. I find it fascinating with energy work that the energy goes where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Like, how cool is that? Like,
Yeah.
you don't even have to be exact. It's going to go where it needs to go the most to make that person feel better.
Absolutely. Yes. It's like
Mhm.
surrendering to the process with trust that it's going to be just fine. Because it's not me, although I'm the one helping, I'm not the one, it's not me doing it. I'm just like a vessel that things come through and then we figure it out. But I don't have to say, this needs to go to your left shoulder. That's where we're focusing. That may be where it is,
Mhm.
but I don't need to worry about that part. We just
Yeah.
get to surrender to the process and trust that it's going to be in alignment, and it always is.
Pretty amazing. It's, maybe we should change the name from like Reiki practitioner to Reiki facilitator,
Yeah,
because that's really what you're doing.
absolutely.
I mean, you're practicing Reiki. Okay. So yeah. But amazing. And I see the two working here as a professional burnout specialist and dealing with energy work. See, I had no idea. So until today, when you talked before we went on today, but that makes perfect sense. I mean, well, look at the like perfect combination to help somebody.
Yeah. And that's really what it's about, is the mind and body connection, right? And when we're so busy and we're so burned out, we stop listening to how our body's talking to us.
Yeah.
And that's why I have, like, on part of my bio for LinkedIn, it's like mind body connection, because that's really what I do. And as much as I can sit in a corporate company and deliver a workshop talking about, what burnout looks like, how we can overcome it, there's no shame. It's also, I can, sit with people emotionally and say, okay, let's really figure out what's going on deeper. And so it really is a beautiful practice, because it's like I'm able to speak on a professional level, because some people, they operate there, they don't want to talk about the emotional stuff because it's too scary, or they don't have time, or it's just not in their wheelhouse of where they're comfortable. And that's okay. And also, we do need to create the awareness that burnout's a big deal and it happens to all of us. There is no person on earth that is exempt from burnout. So,
Yeah, and it could happen at any time, and you might not even realize it's creeping up on you. You just think, I'm busy. Wow, I got a lot going on now, but it's probably because you do have a lot going on, but you also can't manage it
right.
for whatever reason. Let's say you had, personal situation going on that's, chipped away at your soul, and now you're trying to take five different things at work and move it around. Then you got the kids and everything else going on.
That's right.
Mm. Do you deal with companies on a preemptive situation? For example, you go into a company with decent number of employees and talk about how to prevent burnout.
Yeah.
Is that something you would do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've worked with companies. A lady from Intel just recently approached me and asked me if I would consider talking with them. So, yeah, absolutely.
I'm just thinking, you're in Oregon. Don't they have Microsoft there? Is it? I'm trying.
Well, we've got Intel, we've got Lam, I don't know if Microsoft is here or not. Sorry, it's not my.
You know what? I think it's
my-
Seattle. I think it's Seattle now. It
I
just
was
popped in my head.
thinking, I was, yeah.
Somewhere up that way.
Yeah, somewhere on the, yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere over there.
Yeah, super cool. I want to tell everybody the best way to reach you before we continue. If somebody's listening, dealing with burnout, the energy thing is finally resonating with them, or a company that's looking for help to you know be proactive and prevent burnout. How do they reach you?
So they can look me up on LinkedIn. It's Anna Lovell Nesmith. I'll pop right up, and then they can send me a direct message. They can also email me at the happiness effect with an A at gmail.com. And I get back to that. I mean, I'm always plugged in like 9 to 5 on my email. And if I'm not in a client meeting, then I'm absolutely available and I respond relatively quickly. So that's the best way.
I just want to say it's only 9 to 5 because she's not burned out.
Right. Exactly. Because I
Right.
have those boundaries. Yeah.
The boundaries have been put up.
Yeah.
How often, Anna, when you work with somebody and they're burned out, how often do you incorporate energy work with them?
So they know that I offer it relatively quickly. I mean, I am really transparent that that's part of the option should they choose that they want to utilize it. But oftentimes people, I mean, when we talk about emotional blocks, it can seem really scary, especially when you're already burned out. And sometimes they're like, I don't know if I'm ready to go there. There's so many other things going on that I can't even think about that. So usually by about the 10th week, we start talking about the energy work because the 1st through 10th, we're talking about tools and making sure that their mental health is feeling better, that they're feeling more empowered. We're making sure that they feel that they're not operating in that really reactive state of like, I can't keep up. Because if you feel that way, it's too loud to even think about that mind body connection. So we just make sure that we're offering immediate tools, immediately seeing results, immediately offering that support for what burnout is and how it can best serve the tools I offer can best serve them in the moment. And it's week to week because, some weeks are different and heavier than others.
When you work with somebody that came to you because they feel they're burned out, what is the majority of things that people tell you? What is the common denominator for the burnout?
They feel really complacent in life. They're not satisfied. They're overwhelmed. They've tried all these other things. I mean, that's a really common theme. I've gone to doctors. They don't know what's wrong. I've gone and done therapy. It didn't quite work. I don't know what's happening. I've tried to get on anti-anxiety medicine and it's kind of helping, but it's not really doing what I thought it would. And I don't know. I just need to try something different because all the other things I've tried, they haven't served me. But when they hear what burnout is, the overwhelm, the, lack of satisfaction in their life, feeling like they're never good enough, feeling like they're failing at everything that they do, not sleeping well, not feeling well. It's like, well, these are all the things I'm experiencing, but I thought it was XYZ. But when I went down those paths, it didn't fix the issue. And then when they come to me, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's burnout. It is burnout. And it does. It's very tricky because it looks like other issues, and that's why when they find me, they're so ready to just dive in and do the work because they're like, I've already been to the doctor. I've already been to the counselor. I've already tried medicine. It's just none of it's fixing what I'm feeling.
Can you get burned out just by working at a job that you feel doesn't support you anymore?
100%.
Mm.
Yeah. If you feel like you're working really hard and it just is not being seen, or people are not appreciating, or it's like, it's, just day in and day out the same thing with no reward, absolutely that can be burnout. That can cause
Wow.
burnout.
See, a lot of us don't think of it that way. It's more like I got too much, I can't handle it. I got so much going on, and so much going, not that. So that's very interesting. What's the correlation? And I don't know if we talked about this before between burnout and depression.
So they can look very similar. They
Okay.
can look very similar. And that's kind of what we talked about before is they really do look the same. And so oftentimes when someone thinks, okay, I'm depressed, they go to the doctor. The doctor's, hey, I don't feel well. This is what's happening. These are my symptoms. And then they say, I think I might be depressed. And the doctor will say, well, yeah, it sounds like you may be. And then they start talking about potential medicine that can maybe help. They usually start with like low doses, but then they're not seeing a change. They're not seeing that they feel any better. Oftentimes they feel numb. or they feel like they've become disconnected with the world around them. And they're like, when people are having an emotional response, they're not able to meet them there because they feel like the medicine they started taking has caused other issues. And so then they don't want to take that. And they're like, okay, well, I don't understand what's happening because I thought this was going to help me, but it didn't. So what else is going on? And burnout looks like that. When we're so tired and we're overwhelmed and we don't feel well, and it feels like everything we do, it's that idea, I said it a few times, of barely having our head above water, like almost like just like barely, and we're just treading and we're tired and we're starting to like bob under almost. It's like, I don't know what else to do, but I just tried this other thing and it didn't work. So this isn't it. This isn't the answer.
Yeah.
And so then when we talk about burnout, and I said this to you before and I'll say it again, but when I tell people you're burned out, but it's going to be okay. It's just like, they're like, oh, thank God. Like, I didn't know. I thought something was really wrong with me. But when someone says you're going to be okay, it's like, that's what I needed. I needed someone to tell me like, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. We just have to walk through this path and get you through this. And then you're going to be fine. And they always are. And I say this with a lot of like, I'm so grateful, but 100% success. I mean, I'm so proud of that.
I always say this, there's a place for meds and, maybe as a last resort, but what's going to happen with meds is that it's just taking care of the symptoms, not the problem.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. There's absolutely a spot and a place for that. And I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying the work I do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I say that to everybody. That's like when you get to the point where it's like, I need it. I need some help now. It's okay. However, these other things will still exist. It's going to help you deal with those other things. But until you take care of the other things, it's almost just going to be like the circle going around and around.
That's right. And, I have a client and she was talking to me about a month ago, and she, a couple of years back, had to get on, I think it was either anti-anxiety or depression meds. And so she was having a really hard time. She was losing her dog. A bunch of this other emotional stuff was happening. Professional stuff was happening. Financial stuff was happening. And she thought, well, I had some of the meds left over. So I started taking them again. And she goes, I feel worse.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so much worse. And so I don't know what to do. And I said, well, it makes sense to me that you're feeling worse once you started taking those, not because of necessarily the medicine. It's because what her subconscious began to associate with the medicine. Last resort, dire straits, cannot handle it anymore. And so I said to her, if you feel like, because it takes like 6 weeks before the medicine to get in the system and really start doing its job.
Yep.
And so I was like, if you only started taking this for a week, and what I just said resonated with you, because she was like, oh my gosh, Anna, you're so right. I couldn't understand why I was feeling worse. And it was because subconsciously, when she needed those meds, she had just recently had a big loss in her life, and it was significant and not expected. And it was really a dark time in her life. And so subconsciously, she connected that medicine with that really traumatic time.
Yeah.
And when she tried to take it again, just by, her own demise, she was like, feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm almost back where I was when I needed these. And so I said, if you're only a few days in, try stopping and see how you feel with that new awareness. Does that make sense? Does it feel right? And she was like, I'm so glad that you told me that, because I stopped taking them and I feel better.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because of the medicine, it's because of her subconscious association with what it stood for to her. So it's like, you're right. Medicine it's important, but it's also tricky because it just sometimes will do this. It's like a Band-Aid, but it's not fixing the issue. And then if we try to come back to that when you really needed it later, it could almost trigger a response of like, oh my gosh, this feels really like, now I feel much worse. And I don't know why.
Yes. And even and again, we're not bashing medicine.
No.
But the period of those 6 weeks, up to 6 weeks, you can feel horrible, nauseous, a lot of things going on there. And then once the side effects potentially kick in, weight gain and things like that, it is what it is, but that might send you down another course. Oh, I'm gaining weight. I feel horrible about myself. And you haven't fixed the problem, and you may just be burned out. Again, Anna, how do we reach you? How do we talk to you?
So look me up on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's a beautiful space that I really work with. The feel of it's wonderful. Anna Lovell Nesmith on LinkedIn. And then you can send me an email directly at the happiness effect with an A at gmail.com. Those are my two core sources, and I'm always right there with them. And you'll reach. I will respond within probably an hour, if not less.
Yeah. And we started talking how I wasn't aware that you do energy work, but I'm not surprised because you're all good energy. You really are. Your vibes are just like so positive. Really are.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. You
Uh,
are too. It's so fun to talk with you.
yeah, and you too. And I learned so much. And this is stuff that we all deal with. This is adulting 101. At some point, I hate to say it, but at some point in your life, you're going to be burned out.
100%.
It's probably going to happen at some point. And for that, there's Anna. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.